pleasure. Thanks.
Thank you, Michael. Fun game. Okay, so we're going to wrap up, and then we're going to have some wine and some cheese. And I really want to just say it's a true pleasure for us to have Kati London be our innovator in residence. Kati is a developer of civic and social games. She's currently the executive producer of Zynga, New York. And previously, she was vice president and senior producer of Area Code. So for her work in the real world games and the early Internet of Things, Kati London was named one of the 20 top 35 innovators under 35 by MIT's Technology Review magazine, and top 100 most creative people in business by Fast Company. So it is a great pleasure for me to welcome Kati London.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here. I'm also a little short, so I'm going to reassess that. And I can't see any of my notes, so this is sort of an on-the-fly thing, so bear with me. I'm really excited today to be here. I'm grateful for being invited. It's very cool to see the kinds of ideas and projects that are emerging from the Innovation Lab. And some of the things that I think are most interesting of what's going on here is some of this, which is the notion of fast and slow. And especially in LA, which is kind of a car culture, I guess, it's where interesting, happy accidents can happen. And it seems like if there's a place where happy accidents can happen, this is one of those places, where there's velocity and slowness happening at the same time that kind of breeds new sorts of conversations and new types of work that can emerge from it. It looks sometimes, maybe it might look a little bit like this. I think it's healthy if a place like this maybe looks a little messy, because what it seems like is being born here right now is this idea of ideas that are new and haven't come to pass yet. And so in order to really think in a new way and be innovative, you have to not be afraid of making a mess and not be afraid of not succeeding. So these are a few of the things, these are some of the themes that I sort of have picked up in my, I don't know, 24 hours or so as I've been here so far and taking in the summit today, which is the idea of, and just forgive me, I'm going to look at the screen a little bit, but real-time data and lunchtime, right? So within the traffic number, big data processing that's happening, and interesting applications that are coming out of that will be consumer-focused and individual-focused as well as industry-focused. There's also time for lunch, and there's time for people sitting together, playing games together like you just did, and taking the time to talk. Ethicists and designer pairs. So not only is this about exploring new technologies, new forms of media, new types of invention, but it's also about understanding that within creating new forms of something that somebody's going to participate in, that they're going to interact with, that there's an ethical responsibility. And that's really important. It's easy to lose that. And I'm really excited to see that as a part of what's happening here. Also that it's not pure technology, that it's also about how social practice and technology are coming together. I think the winning Crunch Prize today is a good example of that, thinking about assistive technologies and how technology can be used for all different folks and reach and allow them to sort of have the kinds of experiences that maybe they wouldn't have before. And it's also a great way to kind of combine people who like to fail fast and people who don't like to fail, which I think is an interesting mashup, right? The idea of people who are sort of like fearless and willing to kind of go outside of their bounds, as well as people who are achievers, who are gonna, no matter what, they're gonna succeed. And pushing those people together to sort of change their framing can really kind of change the outcome. And also synchronous and asynchronous design. I mean, a lot of the projects that we saw today and the kinds of conversations that seem to be happening, they're cognizant of how platforms are changing and about how people are consuming and producing media. People aren't used to and they're not happy or satisfied with just a broadcast experience, and people are going to be consuming media on whatever platform they're using, whenever they're using it, and they don't really care what you think about it or where your experience is designed for. They just want to know that it's going to be there for them in a way that they can consume it that's going to be meaningful in their lives. And understanding time is different, right? So synchronous, real-time experience is fantastic, and we need to have designs for that, but also what's happening is asynchronous design and being aware of the opportunities that are afforded with that kind of thinking. Also, promiscuous productivity and creativity is something that I've seen here, which I think is really important for everybody to keep in mind, and it's very exciting at kind of the birth of a new lab, right? The idea that we all have biases. We need other people to help us see our biases. We all have sort of limits to what we can see and imagine, and working with teams who have very different ways of approaching problems and thinking allows us to step outside of that and come up with and dream up the new things that we couldn't on our own. And I love this notion of quad, of the private, nonprofit, corporate, and artists coming together that Dean Wilson talked about. Again, it is that notion of different perspectives and different goals and outcomes and requirements, but different access as well. It's not one of these sectors that's going to be able to impact all the kinds of changes and all the kinds of innovation that they could working together and pushing each other and pulling each other. And radical accessibility, I think Ben Stokes talked about this when he was talking about Partour. The notion of designing not only if you're thinking to the future of what's coming and what people are going to have in their hands 20, 50 years from now or 10 or 5 years from now, but what is it that's the lowest common denominator right now? And how can we use that as a focusing tool to actually innovate and as a constraint in a sense of challenge-based design to help us come up with a solution that we could never come up with before? Situated engagement, synchronous, place-based, the idea that even though we're all networked to each other and there's immense virtual capabilities that we have, that there's still a reason and a role for synchronous, place-based, situated experiences, that they dovetail back and forth. And as individuals and human beings and as cultures, we're fully capable of navigating those two worlds just because we have an experience that's designed just for the asynchronous, just for the situated kind of place-based synchronous experience, that's not going to deter us from being able to translate that into having a virtual experience, that all those things can mesh together in a user. And this notion of work and play, and you guys were just playing together, and I was sort of had a little bit of time to peek around and see what different tables were coming up with and different ideas. And, I know from my work in games that play can afford people this sense of unsanctioned experience, right? It's a time when it's free and it feels like you have the ability to focus in ways when you feel like you're doing work, you might shut down. And so having that playfulness and that quality of kind of like, this isn't work, this is just fun, and this is being social and throwing ideas around with other people, that's just as important as being serious and taking into consideration what the needs are in the future, what the needs are right now, and what the tools are that we have. And proximity, I think this campus, it's interesting hearing the conversation, the panel conversation about LA and why LA is unique and why some of the challenges with the distributed city that it is. But USC, at least in the short time I've been here, what I've seen is this incredible proximity, this like a budding that's happening between departments, between people, between students, teachers, faculties, research assistants, and it's that is one of the most valuable things I think that this school and this lab has to offer is you bump into somebody and everybody's doing something interesting and something different than you, and you don't get that everywhere. It's the kind of thing that in New York you bump into people on the street and it's a different experience, but in a city that's car driven and individuals in their cars, I think this is something really unique and special here, and the connections are kind of forming out of that. And weirdos. So I was so psyched when I heard, and there's a fish, I was really psyched when I heard Dean Wilson say that it's really important and crucial that one of the things that you need are weirdos, because people don't always talk about that. But, people who are able to think outside of the box and aren't afraid of being the oddball, they're really the ones who don't give a shit sometimes, and they know that it's more worth it to find a new idea, to really dive into the problem, and to come up with some wacky solution that might completely blow somebody's mind. And that's a very powerful thing. that weirdos can contribute. I can't read my slide. There was a tiny joke here, and I think it has to do with the fact that we all have biases, and innovation is a little bit like trying to describe to a fish what it's like to be inside of water, and you can't really do that. So I think we're all kind of fish and swimming together. So with that, I'll stop, and I don't know if you guys have questions or thoughts. I wanted to just sort of recap a little bit of what I experienced today, which was really inspiring, and I'm very excited to be here for the next few days to sort of take part. We're doing a workshop tomorrow, so if you're interested at all in autonomous object systems and the future of cities, please come. Share your ideas, come and create some stuff, and I'm giving a talk also on Tuesday and visiting some classes, so thank you.
So it's been a long day, and I think I want to thank Katie for kind of putting a parentheses around the day. It's been really exciting. We're so thrilled to have you all here, and we have wine and cheese and other things to celebrate, and then and someone lost their glasses and they're up here. Okay, and thanks for coming, really.